Hello, family. How are you doing? Pastor George here. I'm excited. We have another installment of How To Tuesday. And again, we're on a very special topic. We're doing teaching kids and children about money. But we're going to be going into a little bit older now. We're going to go into young adults. I got my special guest with me, but he's actually not a guest. Dear friend of mine, and we're doing East Coast, West Coast. And I have Thomas. Thomas, how you doing today?
Doing all right. How you doing, George? It's always fun to be here with you. Looking forward to this topic. For years I've been, just pouring back into young adults and trying to help people because I had a lot of rocky learning that I had to do when I was a young adult and trying to figure the world out. So I always feel like it's a good opportunity to share.
Right.
So I'm excited about this. We can jump right into it.
Good. And I'm also excited about Thomas. Just really quick, everybody, if you're new, give us a shout out in the chat. Tell us where you're from, what city you're from, and then also we also want to take notes and have things. But I know you're going to do everything digitally. We want to do that. Also, we have a prize at the end. And also, just got to do a real quick introduction in case you just knew us. Is Thomas has actually helped me. He's also helped me with all my seminars. I think you guys know I do teachings all over the country, and I've been doing this for over 20 years. And he has been helping me in doing this and teaching it. And also, he has kids and all the stuff that we talk about. Everything you hear we talk about, we do this stuff. I think you guys all know that stuff about when I go to grocery stores and everything. But hey, Thomas, I broke down the other day and bought my kids a drink. Oh my God, I bought my kids a soda. You guys know I don't buy kids drinks and sodas. They were like, my kids sat there, they looked shocked and everything. You guys know that I don't buy my kids sodas and drinks. You guys understand? We take that money and we invest it. But I decided, you know what, it's just, I'm going to do it. So now I decided a couple
Hey,
times.
once in a while, right? Then it's really a treat, right?
They were drinking. My daughter was like, oh my God. And then they got home and, Mommy, Daddy bought us a soda.
And she was like, was that my husband? Is that actually George?
But you guys understand that same money, you guys understand that we put that in mutual funds and we buy them houses instead of spending that money on ice and soda. But I just did it, and and it's okay. So we're going to do that from time to time. All right, but hey, we have a very special topic today. We're going to be talking about young adults. So, Thomas, what age group do you think we're going to talk about when we say young adults? What age group do you want to kind of hit this on?
I would say, 18 to 21, around there, all the way to like 35. I think some people even pushing 40 still think of themselves young adults. So it's like, I think I define it kind of by that stage in your life where you are, you kind of finished the bulk of your education part of your life, and now you're figuring out how to be an independent adult and kind of build your own life.
Gotcha. So you guys, we're teaching this about investing. I'm going to teach also about building generational wealth. So someone's saying right now, oh, my kids are 8. I don't need to listen right now. No, I want you to listen because we're talking about different stages. We've already done where we taught kids. I started with my kids like around 8 to 12. We're going to do 12 to 18. Then we're going to do 8. Then we're doing this 21 to 30. We're going to do different ages, but I want you to listen to what we're saying because this applies. Because now when someone's 21 or 32, there's things you could do at earlier ages that can make a difference. And also remember, we always do this with our how to. Think of about 5 people. Think about yourself, but also think about 5 people this will be good for. If you're a grandparent, this might be your children, but also maybe your grandchildren. Or the kids that are in your neighborhood and everything. Because remember, we talked about we want to live our lives by design, not by default. And we want to have family. We want to do this with family. So sooner or later, I'm going to bring up kitchen table conversations. That means we're going to talk about things that need to be said. And you may have a niece or a nephew in different areas. So we want to look at these because all the concepts we're teaching are universal. And let me tell you why as we go into this. There is something called a wealth gap. And a wealth gap is that we're noticing that disproportionately, there's people who are the inability to build wealth. So how you build generational wealth is in the Bible, it says, you train up a child in the way that they should go. And when they get old, they won't depart from it. So what happens is you start teaching skills. If you pass on wealth to someone, that's only one part of it. The second part of it is there has to be some education. And then third, there's got to be values. Like you have to believe it. Like you see how I thought I was just kidding about talking about serving drinks to my kids, Thomas, when I started that, and also everybody that's watching, I want my kids to know that because my dad didn't buy us drink. He was like this, hey man, we drink water and we drink lemonade. That's it. I'm not spending the money on the sodas. Yes. But he didn't spend the money on investing. What he do is he said, This is for you to go to basketball camp. This is for you to go to volleyball camp. And my dad had a very specific strategy, and all three of us played division. I have a twin sister and an older brother, and we all played Division I and had scholarships because he invested that way. So my question is, how are you going to invest? And then we want to stop having, and then we want to put together so we don't have what's called a wealth gap. So first of all, I just want to make sure the first thing that we do is we look at what stage we're at. So as you guys have seen, I put this up how many times this year? A lot. So everybody is at a certain stage in their life. Struggling and sinking means inability to pay bills. Steady, you have enough just to pay your bills, but something snap, crackles, or pops, then you fall down. And then we have solid. That means that you're doing pretty well, putting in 401k, doing things like this, take a 1-week vacation, and you can be given in all these areas, okay? Surplus is quite simply extra money and the highest level of service. So my question to you is right now is, what level are you at? Then this is the beauty. Oh my gosh, I get excited when I say this, is what level are your kids at? You understand that if you're at steady, then you want your kids to start being at steady. But then they start getting student loans and different things like this, and then they come back home. Everyone say boomerang. You throw a boomerang, it goes, and then when it comes back, right? Then you got to see that, different things. So what we want to do is have a very specific plan and understand a very specific plan, and then work through it. Thomas, what's some challenges that people have when they come home, let's say from college, or they're 20 years old and 30 years old? What are some challenges people have?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to think about is that there's an adjustment both on the parent side and on the child side that needs to happen, because prior to coming back home, you were a child in the house, and you're not yet an adult. So the expectation was that what your parents say goes, they controlled like a lot of your life. Then you probably went away, you were at college, or you were doing, had a lot more independence in your life, and you kind of started feeling like, hey, I run things, like I'm on top of all of this. And then you may find yourself in a situation where you're back in your parents' home. So the adjustment is that the parents have to understand that this is an adult. And so there's a level of responsibility that I expect out of this adult, but there's also a level of autonomy that I need to give this adult, right?
Oh my gosh, is it time for a kitchen table conversation about that? Go ahead.
Yeah, right. And then on the side of the child who's coming back into the house, you also need to understand that this is still the place of authority of your parents. It's still, your parents are kind of the head of that household. So it's about navigating, okay, how am I going to be a good steward of the time that I'm in here, such that I'm honoring my parents, but I'm also acknowledging that I'm an adult and that I have some freedoms that, would be the case if I lived outside of the house. So I think a couple of tips.
Can we stop for a minute and break this down? Because what he said was very important. So what he talked about was there different stages of life. You guys, I know where I'm facing. Listen to this. I'm going to say a 4-letter F word. Oh my goodness, I'm going to say a 4-letter F word. See, when kids grow up, when you live at home, everything is free. So like what happens, you can just go to the refrigerator, open up, everything's free. So you have to start teaching people the values of money. Then what happens is they go to school, what Thomas just said, and then they come back and they may have debts, they may have other burdens, but they're used to being their own person. But in their house, you have to sit down and say, hey, what are the goals we're going to have? And how are we going to walk through them? So we actually have a debt multiplier that we actually use, a budgeting system, but I want to just kind of break it down a little bit to kind of how we look at certain things. So what happens is, Thomas, and let you jump right back in here, is this. There are certain things we want to ask them about how we're going to save. And you guys remember we do something called save vesting, where we're saving and investing at the same time. Then also we have to understand and talk to them about debt. We want them to be out of debt, and then we want them to talk about income. But we want to sit down and we should already have these conversations. Now, this is for people 21 to 35 to 40, but we should be having these conversations at any age.
Actually, if you had started earlier, these conversations will be easier because you already have a language, a vocabulary around it, and there's a trust that, because there's a difference, somebody feeling like you're being nosy into their business versus understanding that you're like a coach. I always tell my son, sometimes when I tell you something and you don't like how I told you or what the feedback you got, that I'm your coach. I'm your dad, but I'm coaching you. And, as a coach, I have to tell you the things that need to improve as well as the things that you're doing well. This is a good one for everybody. My son is a very sensitive soul. And so he went to basketball. He's actually very good athletically, and, his skill set is pretty advanced for the team that he tried out for. But there's a couple of things. He gets so excited because, especially in COVID, he wasn't around a lot of boys or whatever, that he kind of doesn't listen to the coach immediately the way he should. And also he was kind of talking back to the coach. Now, not in a rude way. It's just he's used to, if somebody says something to me, I can kind of explain why I was doing this thing or why I wasn't doing it. And we were telling him, no, this is like Taekwondo, like the master at Taekwondo. When he says, you do this, you just say, yes, sir. So then he got actually upset. He's almost like crying because we giving him this feedback. And I tried to remind him. I told him this earlier when he played for a basketball coach who was a yeller. I said, when you get feedback, it's just information, right? It doesn't have any emotion tied to it. It's information, which you then decide, what am I going to do with that information? So every time you're starting to feel some kind of way when somebody's telling you something you need to change or something that needs to adjust, just switch in your mind and say, this is information. Let me take that information and say, how does it line up to either my values or what I'm trying to do? Is it going to help me? So now every time he comes back from basketball practice, I say, what's the new thing that you learned today? Because you're there trying to learn. So if you take a different stance, and this ties to back to what we're saying here, because some of the things we're going to say today probably going to ruffle some people's feathers, but it's information, right? And you can decide what you're going to do with it. And mostly, if you really sit back and are honest with yourself, I always do this. Most of the time when I'm getting really upset about something my wife is telling me to change, there's probably something I need to change,
That's a good point.
So think about, as we're going through these things, both on the parent side and on the children's side, that this is information and feedback, which probably means some changes may need time. Unless you're doing everything perfect, everything's going fine, everybody's doing what they need to do, which is rarely the case. Even George and I always have to make adjustments, right?
That's good. So first of all, first thing he brought up was very, very good. We want to have a communication plan. You guys can type this in the chat also, and nobody's perfect. So Thomas, a great illustration with you and with me is that everything is a learning process. You know what I mean? Like, so, hey, there's certain times where I have to deviate, right? So I'm never, like Sheila, I'm never going to buy my kids drink. But I'm like, hey, a couple times a year, if people do good, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we always have to make adjustments. What's our word when we teach, when we do our how-tos? What's the word we always say? Always be prepared to pivot. And our world is changing. I think you see how our world is changing so rapidly, so things can happen and we do them. And also, he brought up a key point that I'd like to move into right now, is do the finances together. You start sitting down and talking with your kids or young adults about finances. Because there's so many times when I'm counseling people or I'm meeting people or clients, and they say, I'll say, how much does your son make? And he'll be 32 years living home. They say, I have no idea. I'm like, you have no idea. Okay, so we're gonna talk about rent and different things earlier, but I wanna show you another illustration of why we wanna have this and how we wanna use this and actually run this. So what happens is, there are 4 stages of financial. These are for adults. This is for adults, but I want you to starting this with your young adults and with your kids. Spending control, everyone, real quick. That's a budget. Then debt elimination. Do you guys know? I'm going to come back to debt elimination. We spend a lot of time on, and you want by the way, your kids need to pay off their student loans. Okay. All right. I'm going to come back to this slide in 1 second. I'm teaching a Bible study. We teach a stewardship class, and there are people who are literally faith atheists. They will sit down and they'll pray for someone. They'll pay. Well, do you believe this person will buy someone else a car? They'll say yes, but they don't believe it for themselves. And there are people that don't believe they'll ever get out of student loan debt. So we want to show you how to do that. We have classes. We teach you all about debt. There's one on our playlist that's called Do Good, Get Out of Debt. So we teach an entire class on that, and we want to make sure that you avail yourselves of that, and you actually come. There's a class that's available to. Then say vesting. You want to have your kids saving and investing. And you guys already know we start that at age 5 and 6. And if you guys say you don't have the money to do that, just make sure you ain't buying nobody no drink. I'm gonna leave the drinks alone, okay? But I'm doing that. And then build a wealth machine. Is that your kids need to look at opening up a business and everything. Thomas's daughter has a business and she's doing well. And you raise entrepreneurs, or you raise what's called multipreneurs. So you sit down and you go over this and you start building those values in your children right off.
Can you just put back that graphic? There's something I was thinking about in terms of if we're talking about young adults. So you're going to be in kind of two buckets. Either you had these kind of conversations with your children as they were growing up, or this is kind of the first time it's really coming out. So I think these 4 things are actually a really good way to break it down as you're talking with your young adult. The spending control piece is really about, okay, top line, what's the number coming in, and what do we think the things are that you're going to need to spend money on? Generally, around that age, if you have college debt, that's probably one of the biggest ones. The second other big one is living expenses. Now, if somebody is living outside of the house, that's going to be their rent, or maybe they're fortunate enough that they even thought about buying a place and they actually have a mortgage. But those 2 things are probably going to eat up a lot of what's coming in. So spending control is really about understanding together what's coming in and what's going out. If that's a negative number, maybe since you're young and you still have energy, you've got to figure out some side things that you're going to do to make that gap fill in, right?
Can I jump in here real fast? Because we can't let this go. So everyone, we've already talked about having a kitchen table conversation. Then also, if you remember, we have that debt multiplier that shows a budget. I'll put that up as well in our debt. But budget, you put money in debt, budget, and prosperity dollars. You sit down and you go over your finances. Now, if you have children above age 18 and they're living in your home, people need to pay rent.
Yeah.
You didn't get it. Let me give it to you again. If you have children above 18 living in their home, you have to pay rent because you want to have them, show them like this is what society is. And stop making excuses, okay? In other words, like don't say they're in school, they're in this, okay? So if they're in school, they can still get a job. They can still do things, okay? And they just need to pay. Now remember Thomas told the story, and we don't mean to ruffle anybody's feathers. We're not trying to make him mad. I know we don't want you to tune off or do that. But just all I'm asking you to do is think about that. Think about what we're saying and praying, and think about something long, and think about this long term. You know, how that's going to work, because we have to think long term, like letting a young man live in your house rent free. I'm going to do this one time, and then I have whole sermons on this. Living rent free doesn't actually teach him the skills. Then later on, it's going to affect him because he may never find a wife. He's going to find another mother because he's learning how to live and not pay rent. And the same with the daughter anymore. So what we want to do is we want to do baby steps. Like maybe they start by, and by the way, I live in Los Angeles. He's on the East Coast in New Jersey. So maybe you start off with $200 a month, and then you raise it $100 a month because a 1-bedroom apartment. You go to just type in your zip code and say rent an apartment, and then you add up what the rent would be, all the expenses, the utilities, and you sit down and you show it to them. Then say, I love you, and I'm showing you this is actually what we're paying, so they see the value of it. I'm gonna get in trouble. You didn't get it. Let me give it to you again. If you show them the value, because right now people take stuff for granted. Right now, just before we started taping this, it's dinner time. The kid, my son walked by and just opened the refrigerator, got a snack, and walked right back up this. You see, he doesn't understand that, Daddy. Like he understands it. He understands it a little bit now because they go. But during COVID, we don't take them to grocery stores, but they go to Costco and they see us do that. I tell them we're going to do this with that. And I'm starting to teach them the value of money because I'm going to transfer that skill. Because actually, you want your children to do better financially than you. And how that happens is by you teaching these very specific things. So number one, housing costs, and then and then we're going to go through that. And then also, Thomas, I want to have you come back, talk about, we want to prioritize it. So how do you prioritize?
Yeah, and I think the housing costing, just to piggyback on what George was saying, though this young adult years is about training to be out there in the world as an independent person who's contributing to society. So as a parent, one of the ways you can help them with that is to give them a reality check or a real experience of what that may be like. That's what we're saying when we're saying, make sure that if they have money coming in, that it's breaking down the way, if they were living in an apartment, it would break down that way as well.
Right, I don't interrupt you. I got to do it. Everybody type in the chat about 5 things that your parent has said to you growing up that you either using or used before. You know what I mean? Like when you drive by the restaurant and say, hey, your kids go, I want some Chick-fil-A. Okay, I'm starting off. I want some Chick-fil-A or McDonald's. You got some Chick-fil-A money? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Or like money doesn't grow on trees, you know, right. All that stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My twin sister, I have a twin sister named Jen. She goes, I only drink fresh squeezed orange juice. Okay, well, make sure you got a fresh squeezed job. Okay, so just what things financially, and then you guys give me a couple of them. I got to do my dad one time. Whenever my dad, we go into a grocery store, and they would have, you know how you have like Cheerios or something like this. And if we pick that up and say, Daddy, can we have that? He would look at it, do the old Fred and go, why did you pick that high? And he said, when they got Toasty Oats for $2, you know, like he would use the off-brand one and say that. And I just watch him, and then gradually we were just like, we didn't do nothing to pick that stuff up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, and I know when I was a young adult, once I got out of the house, all those things which I thought I was being deprived of, like I had this feeling of like, I need to get that thing, you know, like I wanted to get, you know, better sneakers or like get all that stuff. But the thing that was a good check for me is my experience is a little bit different because I came from overseas. So I was immediately not connected to my parents' resources. And I quickly saw how quickly money went. So if I spent it on this, it wasn't available for that. That's what you're trying to get them to kind of see clearly, because like one of the other things that's going on around this age in the young adult ages, I remember this, there's a peer pressure to be connected socially. And it's not a negative pressure. It's like, that's the time of your life you want to be going out, you want to be with your friends and all this stuff. But I know stories of parents who talk about there's a kid who doesn't have the funds to contribute toward the water bill, but she sees her going out to Chipotle and going, you know, doing this, doing all that. Now that is what we're trying to say. Exactly. You have to make a reality check about. If you were out in the world and you were renting an apartment and your rent came due and you had to choose between rent and going out to eat somewhere, you would pay the rent unless you want to get evicted, right? So that's what we're saying is like, you have to sit down, look at how this breaks down and help them to prioritize how those funds are going to go. We're not saying don't have fund money. We're saying put fund money in its right place. And because this is, like we said, a learning process, maybe your kid hasn't had that experience before because like George said, everything else was quote unquote free. Even if you went away to college and there was a meal plan, I know when I went to college, I could eat whatever I wanted because you just went to the dining hall and you can go back for seconds, and like it felt like you didn't pay because it was paid up front through your tuition or your room and board or whatever. So once you get out of those type of protected environments, now you're in a setting where money just, whatever's coming in is what's going to be available to be used. So I think that, you know, the third thing that I think is really important that we do have to acknowledge is that in today's setting, it's more challenging, especially for young adults when they come out of school in terms of the job market and what is available and at what levels you could necessarily earn. There's some who are fortunate to get, you know, really good paying stuff that matches the degree that they studied. But we do have a contingent of young adults who are either kind of underemployed for what their debt burden is, you know? And so as a parent, this is an opportunity for you. You can be a help in that situation where they're not going to go off the rails of being, you know, getting a judgment against them for debt or some of that because you're providing that protection of being in your house. But at the same time, they can be responsible and apportion the money correctly. So those are the things that you have to keep in mind, that the fact that there's most likely student loan debt or some sort of debt situation going on, it's important to be a contributing adult now that you are grown. And then the third thing is, as a parent, understanding that you can help to smooth this over a little bit for them, but doing it strategically. So not smoothing it over so that they're doing irresponsible things, but helping them to transition that gap until their money kind of lines up. They go from struggling to at least a little bit steady, right?
Right. Hey, everybody, we learned a new word. I want everyone to say leverage, leverage. Everyone say leverage. Okay, say it again.
Leverage, yeah.
All right, type it in the chat. I need somebody to say something about leverage. First of all, before I do that, we're learning words today. So we've talked about the four. We talked about pivot. There's times we need to make changes. Now I want to use leverage. Now, this is what we came to talk about, and then that's my last point. Thomas, you brought up a great point. I want people to use, a lot of times what happens during the coronavirus time and this and different things is that we need to leverage opportunities. Actually, your child living at home should help everybody go up a level. Again, if you are struggling, everybody should go up to steady. If everybody's steady, you should go up to solid. You can do it together because what you're doing is you're combining resources. I'm going to say it again. And look, Amen. I want you know what? Wherever you're at in your house, stand up. Sit back down. I'm going to stand up and say it again. Leverage. Because we need to come out better. I mean,
it's a partnership. Yeah.
But hold on a second. Okay, hold on. Let's say you live in a single family home. You live in a single family home. And you say, I want to buy apartments or units. What happens is you and now your kids, we've had so many people do this, move back in with their parents. And then everybody starts saving X number a month, I'm going to say 30% of your paycheck. And then please don't ask me where I get that number from, because you understand that when you buy a mortgage, it's supposed to be 30-40% of your income goes to debt. Okay, that's the business. That's the model that loans are based on. That's not our model. That's not God's model. We want you to be debt free. But let's say 30%. So can I just say $1,500 a month or $1,000 a month? Everyone starts saving that. And you have several kids and they live in that single family home. Then what you do after a year is you go out and look at an apartment building, a 3-unit building, and then you buy that as a family. I'm sorry, Tom, I'm giving out the stuff for our generational wealth. But you understand that then what you do is you save that money and then you buy a house. Does everybody understand that? So then that's actually how you do it. Now I'm going to go backwards again and do it. Let's say you're all living in an apartment and your kids. Actually, how you get them is you start charging them rent. I'm using $1,500 because I think that's low for a 1-bedroom, and they pay you $1,500, and then your son says, hey, you know what? I'm getting married. I'm gonna move out, and he says, I saved up $20,000, and I'm gonna buy a home. Then you take that $1,500 that you've received all those years, and let's say you kept $1,000 or $500. You give them a gift to help them with the down payment. Because you understand that you were doing what with your resources? You were pooling your resources.
Yeah. The point of having them pay the rent wasn't for you to profit off of them or to make life hard for them. If your financial situation allows such that when they're contributing, it's a surplus to you, you can hold on to it and actually gift it back to them later. It's almost like you were saving for them and helping for their future. You could, even if you're savvy enough, put it into some investment. You can go levels with this, right?
Let's do it. That's giving them too much, Thomas. That's giving them too much. Because I already told you I was going to leave. I'm leaving the drinks alone today. But you got to understand that, like, that same money that like with your kids, we're sitting down and we're going over that. You know what I mean? Like our young adults. Like, imagine them having a 401k IRA, where they start saving now and they start buying companies. We're not old. Remember back in the day when?
Oh, actually, you made me think of something.
You started buying. Yeah, I'm coming right back to you. You start to buy these things and doing the things. Remember I told you that we started investing for my kids now, and they started investing when they're like 4 and 5 years old, 3, and you started investing for them and everything. Actually, I started investing for them before they were here. You know what I mean? Like, because what you do is you just start. That's how you build. That's how you build a legacy.
So they have a place to stand on.
It's never too late to start. But when you come back together, you're building together. That's why you guys have that kitchen table conversation. Yep. And you sit down and you say, and everybody starts saving. I'm gonna kick it back to you, but I want to come back to that, and we're gonna say how we're gonna build together, but not too much, because you understand that we're gonna do a building generational wealth seminar. But go ahead, though. Go ahead.
So the way to set up this to be effective again is to think of yourself as a in a coaching position, right? So what George just talked about is it's a partnership. So if you think about a basketball team, the coach and the players want to win the game. So they have the same goal. The coach may have more experience or has a bigger vision of what's everything that's going on, so they can point out things that the individual player may not be able to see. But the thing about the player, and this is Coach Belichick from the Patriots always tells every player, do your job. So like you have a particular thing that you're supposed to be doing for this whole situation to work out, just focus on doing that thing, and I'll look at the larger picture. So with the young adults, so one thing that so when there's another segment of young adults who may be living outside of the house, but they still need your help as a coach. I know with my youngest brother, we had a pretty big difference in age. So when he got his first few jobs, like one of the things that I would do is to be his advisor when he'd get an offer and he had the benefits and he wanted to look at what the offer, what the benefits meant. Because, we always, if you've been working for a while, you assume that everybody understands how to read, like what's important with a 401k, what's important with the medical and all that stuff. But if it's your first job, you've never seen that stuff before and you don't know, is it good or is it not? Especially if you're comparing two different offers or things like that. So what I did was I put myself in a position of basically to be an advisor to him. I wasn't telling him you must do the XYZ, but what I was saying is like, okay, this looks like what it's saying is this is what's going to happen. This is when you get in there, make sure that your whatever they match to for the 401k, that you're putting that away. We actually sat down and did a little spreadsheet. So we knew what was going to come in, and then what he was going to put towards his student loans, what he was going to put towards savings, what was left for, Netflix and everything else that he wanted to do. And then, basically we made it was very simple. It was like in a spreadsheet, it was a few line items, but then I let him run it. And like a couple years in, he had paid off his student loans because he was fortunate. His first job that he got was a pretty good job and he was able to accelerate. Because what we did was we didn't look at the minimum payment of it. We looked at what was coming in. We said, you can actually double what this loan needs. And he was able to speed that, something that I hadn't been able to do when I came out of school. So I was trying to help his situation to be ahead of what my situation. So think of yourself as you guys are a team and you're in a coach position where you're trying to help them out, but you're both going to win if you win the game, right? The coach gets the championship trophy just like the players, right? And so you're both, it's not an adversarial type situation.
Right. And we're going to do it together. So right now, I want to show you one of the concepts, and then I'm going to tell everybody right now. I want you to write down 5 things. I'm sorry, don't write down 8. Don't write down. Remember, I'm not. Can you type? Can you put it into your phone, or can you type in 5 things that you're going to do? So I want to recap something he said, and then I want to just have us let's just review everything. So one of the things that he said that was really, really, really important is that we want to be able to teach about investing, and we're going to have a whole thing on that. But also you want to make sure also with your kids that you start teaching them to give. You put God first. The Bible says in doing that, but we want to teach them about investing, and you want to have them open up an account. All right. We're nearing Christmas time. Okay. And you understand that I do not buy, please don't call what is it? Child Protective Service to everybody. Now, everybody knows I'm not buying no Christmas presents, right? So what I do is my kids played this video game called Roblox or something. They came and asked me for some Robux and everything. I said, Daddy doesn't do that. There's a company that owns them that's actually very good. And I ended up buying that stock for them back then. So I'm going to start, I do these little presentations where I give them stock. Okay, so and then we'll do a thing on investing, but just to get you prepped for that, just look at all the stuff that you guys see that you're using and buying. And look at some of those companies and we'll do that. We'll look at investing. But right now I want you to begin to save to be able to do that. So we want to teach about investing, and that's at any age. Then next we want to also understand, that we don't pay people Thomas, relax, don't jump up now. We don't give kids no allowances, okay? Kids need to learn how to give. At any age, they need to learn what saving and investing is before they spend. And now if if your child is 30 years old or 22, it's still not too late to do that. You just start saying, let's sit down and let's have a kitchen table conversation. Now let's recap and conclude. What did we learn today? What are the 5 things? What are some things that we learned today? I'll hit some, and then Thompson, let me know if we miss anything. First thing we talked about, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to close that wealth gap. We're trying to see that if a kid left the house and they come back, that you want to sit down and have a conversation and say, hey, these are the rules and responsibilities. So, using my dad again. When I was in college, he said, George, the car needs to be home by 11 o'clock. And I said, Dad, in college, I can stay out all night. He says, no. My cars need to be back in this garage. He gave me a statistic. Usually just tell me that's the way it is, of how many drunk drivers are out at night. And he says, look, I need my car. I don't want it driven around late at night. And he told me there's only 2 things you can be doing after 1 o'clock in the morning. And I don't want you doing either one of them. I still don't know what the 2 things are, but anyway, don't type in the chat.
There's a football coach who told his players that. Tony Dungy said the same thing. He said the worst. He said bad things happen after midnight.
Right.
So if you're a football player on my team and you get home by midnight, I won't see you on the news.
Don't type in the chat what the 2 things are. And by the way, I'm looking at you what those 2 things are. Okay. Then when a child, and then when they come home, when your kids. When they come home, you set up a game plan that involves all the things that we just talked about, having a budget, having a debt, and then asking them business, and then how they're going to grow. And then you evolve that into a family plan. And then I got excited and had to stop talking about it. But then you understand that family plan, right? It's to get your first home, or I'm going to do it. Then can you just pull out a Monopoly game and just set the board down and then just start going like this? Okay, we have 3 kids. Okay, so we're going to buy this house this year and we're all going to pool our money. And then you're going to move into that house, or we're going to rent that house out, and then we're going to buy another house every year and buying them. Okay, so I teach a class that's totally separate than this, also from my private financial planning firm. And I teach a class called Real Estate, where we show you about buying properties and everything. And when I do my generational wealth, I'll show you the properties that I purchased for my children, and in doing that. And then again, the only reason I'm telling them purchase for them so that, because you understand that I'm not spending money on other things, but they still have a grandparent and everything that can do that in that area. And then Thomas went into, and if you want to talk about that, Thomas went into prioritizing your spending. So that's very important. So when you prioritize that means you pay your rent first, or you want to say anything about prioritizing? And then
and I had forgotten the piece that George said, the giving piece. So it's always give first, see, tithe and all that. Take care of the living expenses, especially if you're in a household, contribute towards that, and your debts. Those things, put them right at the top, and then leave money for the fun stuff. You don't want to not, live your 20s and your early 30s, but just put it in the right order.
Right. So there we have it. We have God first, we give, then we talk about saving and investing. Gosh, that's a great technique if you teach that to them. And we have so many people now saying, I want to do that, because I have never heard this as much. Almost now, estate planning. Remember, everybody didn't want to do estate planning. They didn't want to do wills, trusts. Now people do. I don't know if the coronavirus got everybody where they want to do it, but I've never heard more mothers and daughters and fathers and families come back and say, we're all living in the same apartment. I think that's what it is. I think because you can't go out, that everyone's living in this apartment, they're like, we're buying a house. I've never seen that motivation as much as I have during this season, I should say, we're in. So look at how you're going to prioritize also family goals. And then also, I'm going to end with what Thomas said. Everybody play your position. Parents, you have a role to teach and to model it. Because when you come to, some people come to these classes and they don't model what they want their kids to do. So you have to model it, like when you're doing that. So you model good financial behavior, and you do it as a family. Like your kids, like you say, my kids get the groceries, they pay this and I pay that. No. Let's, as a family, sit down and write them down and say, look, this is actually how we're going to grow beyond today. So like in 5 years, if all of us have to have a house, what has to happen? And then we actually walk through it, okay? And I'm thoroughly excited about that. And hey, that's our time today. So I'm gonna have Thomas make some parting remarks, and then we're going to give out a prize. But I just wanna let you know, I am so ready to teach. I have a very special series I'm going to be teaching after this. I just have to show you the preview to it. And I just got to show you a preview to it. I want to do a building generational wealth seminar. But I need you to be ready. So just type in the chat, let me know when you're ready to do that. Because you understand that generations, that means a generation is 20 years. So everybody all the way down. If you're a grandparent, you have to have your kids and you want your grandkids involved because and doing things. Now, I don't have time to get into it because we're going to run out of time. Has everybody figured out the government isn't going to do it for you? Has everybody figured out that they ain't going to do it? You know who's going to do it? God and your family. God is going to bless you. It says in Philippians 4:19, my God. I can't say that I'll hit my chest. My God shall supply. That means he's going to do it. All of my needs according to his riches and glory. So it ain't about you getting something. God already has it to bless you with. So we're going to walk through that. Thomas,
yeah, and he blesses you with it. He blesses you with it because he has a purpose for it, for his purposes, right? That's why we always go back to talk about stewardship. This isn't a setting where we're telling you you need to get rich just to get rich, or you need to get wealthy just to get wealthy. What we're talking about is that whatever those resources are that the Lord puts into your hands, what is the best way to do his will with them. So the word that I would leave you with tonight is partnership. This is a partnership between you and your children. You're not fighting against each other. You're not trying to make them do something and they're not trying to resist what you're trying to do is to say, hey, as a family, we have this larger goal of making sure everybody is in the right place. So how can we partner together? Partnering involves the transfer of the information that you have and training that you can to help them. Partnership has responsibility. Do your job. You as a parent, you know your role, the child being clear on their role. And then the third part is like, it's a partnership, but it can be fun too. You know, like it's fun to do stuff together and to kind of grow financially together. So this doesn't have to be a stressful conversation that you avoid or that you have to, you know, when we say kitchen table conversations, it's important because the kitchen table is usually very casual and it's kind of chill. People getting something from the fridge. Remember, well, we don't really talk about the Cosby Show anymore, but like any of those sitcoms, they were always in the kitchen when it was like a family, right? Because that's where it's kind of like a little bit looser, a little more laid back. It's okay. Give room for people to make mistakes. Give room for people to adjust and to fail and to come back from it. That's what we're talking about. If it's a partnership, and nobody's writing anybody else off. What you're trying to do is for all of you to rise together. So that's how I would leave it with you. Perfect.
And then also, guys, we're about to give out a prize. So we're about to give out a prize, but I also just want to say one last thing. Yeah, you know, you can't talk about the Cosby Show anymore, but remember there's one that was a classic that I love to show. That's the one where Theo, his parents moved all of his stuff out of his bedroom and started charging him for every meal, everything like this, to give him a reality of life. And so I want us to find our way. And then, hey, you know what, Thomas? Let's charge us to that. Let's have one where we have a little game where we play with our play with our kids a game where we kind of show people to show them the realities of what life is like. Because he went down into the kitchen and got something to eat, and his mother and his sister said, "Hey, his sister says, "Hey, you want something to eat?" And he goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Here, you want a sandwich?" And that, and then she laid it down from him and pulled out a little bit. And goes, that'll be $15.95. Because our kids don't even know that. So watch my kids edition when I tell you about when I went to Legoland and I made before we walked in, I made a little deal with the kids and about how I taught them about finances and Legoland. And I made Legoland a reality for them, and they didn't in doing it. So we want to do that. But in doing that, thank you, Thomas, again. And I love it. I said leverage, but he changed the word to partnership. So we went from pivot to partnership. So I really appreciate that. So now, everybody, now we're about to conclude our show, but we always give out a prize. So if you could type in the chat a number between 1 and 100, and we have a prize. The prize that we're going to give today is there's a book that was written. I don't know if bam! See, Thomas, I'm still quick with it. The Wealth Cycle. So this is a book that I've written. And by the way, Thomas, where's Thomas? Thomas's name is written right in there. Okay, so I'm gonna say we've written a book that's it's called The Wealth Cycle, and all the slides that I'm showing you, most of the slides that I'm showing you that I show all throughout the year are from this. This book walks you through all of the keys of walking in financial success, and we're going to give it. So yes, again, you guys just put in a number between 1 and 100, and then we're going to give out a prize. Okay. All right. So hey, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank Thomas. Hey, everybody, give Thomas a hand. Give Thomas a hand.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, as always.
In there, and give them a shout out and everything like that. And then again, we want to help you live your life by design, not by default. And we want to walk you through all the financial principles. If you got any other show ideas, different things like that, shoot us in the chat. We also have our email in there. So again, we have a community engagement committee that works with all the things you saw for lunch. We do that. We also have a stewardship committee. People ask, hey, how do I get involved in helping? And we teach so many classes. Make sure you get involved in that. Also, we have a playlist. So of all of our previous shows, they're in 2 areas. They're on Facebook. So we have those where you can watch replays of other ones we've done, like on debt, on finance, and just different areas. Living a good life. We also have ones on health, and they're also on YouTube. So you can watch those. And remember today, I want you to share this with at least 5 people. And I want everybody to give me a high five. Just in the chat, tell me you give me a high five by doing 2 things. Sharing this with 5 people. And the second one, high five, is this. 5 things you're going to do differently. Like, hey, I'm having a kitchen table conversation. Hey, I'm going to buy one of my grandkids. Please do this for me. Please do this for me. Can you buy them stock this year? And then there's college plannings. I have other classes I taught for younger, like buy people stock. And then say, my family's going to sit down and we're going to buy a house together. Because if we pool our investments together, we're going to do it. Just tell me 5 things you're going to do. All right. And then also in giving and love the Lord. Amen. So again, thank you everyone for joining. And now let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you. We thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for blessing us with life and that abundantly. Lord, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Lord, you come to give us life. And we thank you for that. Lord, we pray over what we learned today, Lord. We pray over families coming together. Lord, we pray over working together, and we pray over growing together, Lord. Lord, draw us closer to you in every area of our lives, Lord, and then let us grow to be the people that you would have us to be, loving people, caring people, and sharing people. Lord, we say this prayer in the name of Jesus. And all the blessed people of God said, amen. Can we just give the Lord a hand of praise? I know you're home by yourself, but you ain't by yourself. There are people clapping their hands. You got people in LA clapping their hands. You got people in New York. You shout out your city all over. We're praising the Lord. So thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you on our next show.
Amen.